All right, joining me now is David Brandon at Bird Rights NBA. He's covering OKC for Daily Thunder. Really excited to have David on, and thank you so much for helping me cover the Thunder this season, David.
Yeah, not a problem. I actually haven't written for Daily Thunder in a minute, but I do post for them occasionally, so it's still on my profile. But yeah,
All good. Well, I'm excited. I know you are very consistent in sharing your Thunder thoughts throughout the year. So anybody that's looking for a Thunder check-in should be checking out David's work. Thank you so much, man, and everybody make sure to go follow Daily Thunder, of course. Uh, David, this is an interesting team. This is an interesting group of young talent mostly, but some veterans that have been introduced over the course of this last off season. Tell me, what do you think is the most interesting thing about the team as of this moment?
I think the most interesting part about the team at this moment is how Chet's going to fit with the team. That's the big question this year. I think Presti kind of talked about this in his kind of preseason conference. They want to see how pieces fit together.
Sure.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is obviously the center of the team. Then you have some of the young guys like Josh Giddey, J-Dub, Holmgren now. They're sort of in the process right now, like they were in the early days of Thunder U, back with Jeff Green and Durant and Westbrook, where they're trying to figure out how the pieces work together, who's here long term, who's somebody you build around, who's somebody you maybe trade. And Holmgren's central to that because he's the guy they've got their hopes pinned on him as, maybe the other young dude to be Shai's running mate, and it's really going to be interesting to see how he works with the other guys over the course of this year.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see it. Obviously, missed the entire last season with the foot injury that he sustained. But I am so looking forward to seeing that after being drafted second overall, I believe. Uh, Tell me, is he going to start at power forward or center? Because I'm very curious as to the direction that they go. Obviously, OKC has been a smaller team. They've trended smaller over the course of these last couple of seasons. Is Chet going to play the four, or can he physically handle the five?
I think they're going to play him at the five. I mean, they played Muscala at center last year. They played the other Jalen Williams at center last year. There were points where I think they had Kenrich Williams guarding the center last year.
Yeah.
And Kenrich is not a big dude. He's not center. I mean, he's a big dude, but he's not center size. So it's really going to be interesting to see, but I think Holmgren starts at center. But position-wise, I mean, the Thunder just generally have a bunch of like 6'6" to 6'9" ish guys that can kind of flex a little bit in terms of where they guard. So it's hard to say like yes center, but does he who does he guard? In some matchups he might be guarding the center, in other matchups they might cross match or something like that. I don't know. So yeah, I think he starts at center.
Mark Daigneault has obviously mixed and matched and been willing to try a bunch of different things since arriving. And so it may not be the traditional center or power forward kind of mix like we're talking about. It could just be throw out a bunch of 6'6" to 6'9" guys and then put Chet in there and see what happens and try to condense the floor as much as possible, especially on the defensive end. This team has obviously shown that they are capable of that, winning 40 games this past season. But tell me, so SGA made the leap last year. There's a chance that he makes an even stronger one this year and kind of vaults himself into that true superstardom. Beyond him, though, who would you consider a pillar of this roster? Because I like you talked about at the outset, that seems to be one of these other questions where the team is still trying to figure that out, not just the fans.
Yeah. I mean, it's Shai, and then I think they're hoping for Chet. And it's hard to say past that. I know they like Wallace. Don't know where he's going to fall on that spectrum yet. He's a rookie. He hasn't played yet. Giddey and Jalen Williams, Jalen Williams, J-Dub they call him.
Yep.
Those two guys are kind of the had been kind of the 2A and 2B behind Shai the last season, and it's hard to say which one. Giddey, neither of them are fantastic shooters. Giddey is an incredible passer. I mean, maybe top 3 in the NBA. He's really good.
Right.
He just thinks ahead. He's a great playmaker. But the possibility is that he's just tall Rubio. He's not a great scorer. He's a passable scorer. He's a good rebounder. He has good positional size, which helps with defense. But it's hard to say if he becomes more than tall Rubio. J-Dub, on the other hand, is a much more aggressive defender, and he can score some, but we'll see which guy kind of pops a little more. And whether Wallace becomes one of those guys, or someone random. This team is stacked with a bunch of competent guys, and they're all very young, so you don't really know yet who's going to pop. But I think the guys that I'd be keeping an eye on are Giddey and J-Dub.
Yeah, there's reason to believe in each of those guys. I love J-Dub coming out of the draft last year, and he seems like the traditional wing that every team is hoping for. Just can do just about everything on the court that you want him to do. Osman Zhang is he somebody that people should keep an eye on too? He just seems he was off the radar obviously last year, but it seems like just one of these impressive wings that you could throw out there.
They did call him out as I don't remember who it was in the interviews, but someone called him out as being the guy who grew the most over the summer in terms of skill and just knowing the game. So yeah, he'll be interesting to watch as well. There's so many guys on this roster that you actually forget that there are. I mean, the Thunder are going to wind up cutting some guys who have productive careers.
I had that in my notes as hey, outside of because I have the 10-man rotation right now is Shai, Giddey, Dort, J-Dub, and Chet Holmgren, and then Jalen Williams will be in there as another big with size. Kenrich Williams, Vasa Micic, who's a guy who they're bringing over from Serbia. Isaiah Joe and Osman Zhang is the 10 that I have in there, but that leaves out Davis Bertans and Trey Mann and Jeremiah Robinson Earl and Kaysen Wallace and Aaron Wiggins and Victor Oladipo. You might be cutting Oladipo, I guess, or Davis Bertans, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're gonna. So my thought is they may spring for a mid-season trade. You could, with Bertans' salary and Dort's salary, that gets you to 32. Package a couple of young guys with that. Package a couple of young guys with that. Some picks, something like that. OKC's in striking distance of just about anybody that they could want in terms of both salary that they can match with comfortably and guys that are, useful on the court. I think Bertans is a guy that they're going to try and rehab his value a little bit. They've done that over the years with several people. They did it with CP3. They did it with Horford. I think they're going to try and build him up a little bit. Oladipo, I think he's still out. He's kind of just with the team and doing his injury rehab. They love him, but he might be cooked at this point in his career. He's been injured a lot.
That's tough. But I mean, got other guys that can step up in his place, and if it's an excuse to play Kaysen Wallace a little bit more, then sure. There's reasons to believe in the collective group.
I'll note too, just before you go on, the Thunder actually run a deeper rotation than most teams. So you mentioned 10, but Dagnall routinely goes 12 or 13 deep in the regular season. He loves mixing and matching his lineups. There are guys who will play a bunch in one matchup and not play much in another. He's very flexible with that. So I don't think it's as big of a concern as it would be with some other teams because he loves doing his little plug and play thing with a lot of guys. But yeah, it is still a concern.
I'm curious to see how it goes. I there's just so many different elements to this team that could go one direction or the other. Vasa Micic and a couple of other guys, kind of more veteran options. Does this team need a vet in the room, or they seem to still kind of have their heads on straight? Like I just recorded the Houston Rockets preview, and they needed some other guys to come in and really figure some things out and help them with that. But Vasa Micic may or may not play a ton, but still seems like a guy that they're going to try to feature at least a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think he'll play. I mean, they paid him all that money. They better play him. You know,
Fair.
like they paid the contract buyout and his his contract, so I would presume he will play. They haven't had a real backup point guard. They didn't last year. Man is he's an undersized, kind of catch fire guy. He's a spark plug. Either he's on or he's not.
Right.
And he's not really a guy that like you want as the primary guy running the offense. So I think Mishik will play a fair bit.
All right, well then, hey, give me a win total prediction for this team. They win 40 games last year. I'm very curious to hear where your head's at, just because I mean I think that this might be a year where the actual record doesn't change as much, even if the development for this team goes through the roof.
Agreed. The middle of the West is just really good. I mean, I feel like we say this every year, but the West is a bloodbath. Even there's going to be a team or two that has injury issues or just random chemistry stuff and drops out that we can't foresee right now. That always happens. But you look at the top of the West, I don't think that's changing a ton. You look at the middle of the West, I think a bunch of teams got better. I don't think most teams got worse.
Sure.
So the Thunder win total, I think, is probably going to be around 40 to 45 games. I'll say 45 just to be on the higher side. But I think it's going to be a season of kind of figuring out what they have, and then next year, when when they're comfortable with, okay, these are the guys that we have. Here's who we want to keep. Here's who we want to cut or trade. Then they leap. So we'll see. But I think around 40 to 45 is probably reasonable.
I love that. I have them at 42. I think that that's the right call. There's no reason to believe that this team got worse. Chet, I think we'll see what they actually do with him and whether there's enough insulation around him in case he's sat a few games here or there. But no, I think that this group is going to be very fascinating, and the internal development will be real, even if it doesn't really translate into wins immediately. What would it take though if this team did pop? If they were like, because I've seen some people predict that OKC wins 50. I've seen some people think that they jump into that upper echelon of playoff teams. So what would it take for that to happen in your estimation?
It would take Holmgren coming in and immediately being an impact player. It would take at least a couple of guys on the team becoming consistent shooters from outside, particularly Giddey or J-Dub. One of those two becomes a consistent outside shooter, the team becomes much more of a threat. If both become consistent outside shooters, even on low volume, it really opens things up. Just because, like, this team, Shai's had some of the worst spacing in the NBA. Krishna Narsu was talking about this with me the other day. His spacing's appalling. Yet the dude is putting up elite numbers in a phone booth.
Yeah.
So any of these guys, if like two or three of the guys can shoot, and they've got what's his name, the former Spurs guy, the guy who taught Kawhi to shoot.
England, yeah.
So they've got him. Giddey's shooting was better last year. I'm interested to see if it pops a little more. But yeah, that would be like Holmgren coming in and making an immediate impact on defense, and being at least decent on offense, and a few guys learning to shoot would really open up this team.
Isaiah Joe made such an impact last year. There's reason to believe that just having one guy who could make an impact as a floor spacer will be super helpful. But we will see what ultimately happens in OKC. Shai is obviously spectacular and deserves all the credit that he's about to get. But I'm really looking forward to watching this season unfold. David, thank you so much for tuning in, man. Make sure to check out all of David's work at Bird Writes NBA, and make sure to stop by Daily Thunder if you want your Daily Thunder updates. David, thank you so much, man.